Imagine you are standing in a courtroom,
Okay.
and the defendant sitting in the chair is your own anger.
Oh, wow.
Right. So on one side of the aisle, you have the prosecution.
Right.
This is like a long line of philosophers stretching all the way back to the ancient Stoics. And they're telling you that anger is a poison.
Yeah, that it's a vice.
Exactly. A temporary madness that you just need to discipline away before it destroys your peace of mind. But then on the other side, you have the defense arguing that your anger is this profound virtue. They're telling you it's a noble signal that you've been wronged.
Right. And that letting it go means accepting your own humiliation.
Yes. And as a society, we have been stuck in this exact courtroom arguing about whether your anger makes you a good or bad person for roughly 3,000 years.
It is an exhausting trial. I mean, the most frustrating part of that intellectual stalemate is that both the prosecution and the defense make completely valid points.
They really do.
But by obsessing over the morality of the emotion, they are both entirely missing the mechanics of what actually creates change in the real world.
Which is exactly why we are dragging you out of that ancient courtroom today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is to explore this groundbreaking new book that just abandons that 3,000-year moral debate entirely.
Thank goodness.
I know. The book is called Feminism Beyond Anger, A Future Built on Solidarity, Not Outrage, and it's by author Anna Kriger. And what is so entirely new and original about Anna Kriger's approach is that Anna Kriger takes us down the hall into what the book calls the court of consequences.
Yes.
So the question for you isn't whether your anger is justified anymore. The question is what your anger actually produces.
And that is the paradigm shift right there.
Yeah.
What Anna Kriger does that is so incredibly original is that Anna Kriger treats anger strictly as mechanical fuel.
Right.
It's not a verdict on your character, you know. It is simply information combined with energy. And the ultimate fate of our collective or personal anger isn't decided by how hot the fire burns. It's decided by the architecture, like the actual physical and social structures we build around that fire.
But before we can actually use that fuel, we have to stop fundamentally misunderstanding how the ignition system even works.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Anna Kriger uses an analogy early in the book that I think everyone listening will just feel in their bones. The smoke detector at 3 in the morning.
Oh, it's the perfect visualization. I mean,
Yeah.
think about a standard home smoke detector. It goes off at 3 in the morning, absolutely shrieking, waking up the whole house.
Terrifying.
Right. You stumble out of bed, your heart is pounding out of your chest, the adrenaline is just flooding your system, and it's just a burnt piece of toast from the kitchen.
Just breakfast gone wrong.
Exactly. The machine does not know the difference between a slightly overzealous slice of bread and the house actually burning down to the foundation. It is blunt, it's incredibly fast, and it is entirely pre-rational.
Wow.
And Anna Kriger argues that human anger evolved to be exactly the same thing. It is a blunt, jumpy alarm that a boundary you hold has been crossed.
Okay, let's unpack this. If my anger is really just this hypersensitive alarm that freaks out over social burnt toast just as loudly as it does over real structural fire, my first instinct is just to rip the battery out.
Naturally.
Like, if the alarm is bothering everyone in the house, shouldn't the goal just be to turn down the volume?
And that instinct is the exact trap society sets for us. Anna Kriger calls this the volume knob delusion.
The volume knob delusion.
Yeah. Culturally, we are constantly told to fiddle with the volume. We're told to either calm down, be reasonable, take a breath, or conversely, we are told to get angrier, lean into the rage, let them hear you. But volume doesn't change the route the anger takes.
It's like adjusting the volume on a terrible song on your car radio.
Yes.
Turning it down doesn't magically make it a good song, and cranking it to maximum doesn't fix the melody. It's just a louder or quieter bad song.
That is exactly it. Turning down an unhelpful anger just makes you a quieter victim, and turning up an unhelpful anger just makes you a louder one. Volume feeds the machine, but it doesn't steer it. Adjusting the intensity of the shriek does absolutely nothing to fix the actual wiring fault in the wall that is causing the smoke in the first place.
So, if fiddling with the volume knob doesn't put out the fire or fix the wiring, what actually happens to all that raw pounding fuel when the alarm goes off?
Well,
Because Anna Kriger outlines a few specific paths our anger can travel, and the book points out that human beings, by default, almost always default to behaviors that completely fail to fix the problem.
yeah, the two failing routes. The first default is swallowing or suppression. This is when the fire goes inward. You feel the anger, the alarm is ringing in your head, but you rapidly calculate the social cost of speaking up.
Like, will I get fired?
Right. You realize it might cost you your job or cause a scene at Thanksgiving or just make you look difficult. So you clamp a heavy lid on it, you smile, you keep the peace.
But the physical fire doesn't actually go out just because you put a lid over the smoke.
Physiologically, it does the exact opposite. Because you haven't addressed the boundary crossing, the source just keeps producing fuel. So the fire goes inward and creates a slow, chronic corrosion.
Ugh, that sounds awful.
It is. Anna Kriger dives into how swallowed anger literally wears down your physical and emotional systems, elevating cortisol, burning out your nervous system, creating chronic exhaustion.
Wow.
And Anna Kriger points out the structurally cruelest part of this dynamic. The wrongdoer walks away completely untouched. Their ledger is totally clean, while you, the victim, are paying a daily, exhausting physiological tax just to maintain a false peace.
That is a brutal realization. You are paying the tax for someone else's boundary violation.
Exactly.
But then we have the exact opposite reflex, which is spraying or discharged. This is the bonfire. You don't swallow the fire, you fling it outward in every direction.
Right.
You yell at the customer service rep, you vent on a massive Twitter thread, you join a huge chaotic march, and let's be honest, it feels amazing.
Oh, it feels euphoric.
Yeah, it builds this incredible, intoxicating sense of solidarity among everyone standing around the fire.
It feels like power. But Anna Kriger points out a devastating truth. A bonfire does zero structural work. It lights up the night sky, it warms the hands of everyone standing in the circle, and then, by morning, it just turns to ash. The institutions you are angry at are completely untouched by the heat.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Anna Kriger applies this exact concept to our modern digital age with an idea called the clicktivism ceiling.
Yeah.
Think about it like revving a sports car engine while the transmission is locked in neutral. You're making a ton of noise, the engine's running red hot, the RPMs are maxed out, but the car isn't moving an inch forward.
Right.
You can get 3 million signatures on an online petition, you can trend globally for 48 hours, and the institution you're targeting will simply wait you out. They know you haven't applied any real structural torque to the wheels.
What's fascinating here is how Anna Kriger frames digital outrage as a literal algorithmic drug. Our digital platforms are specifically engineered to reward the expression of anger with immediate attention. You get retweets, you get likes, you get visibility, but attention is the wrong currency to buy structural power.
Right, the exchange rate doesn't work. You cannot walk into a legislature and spend 3 million likes to change a zoning law.
Precisely. And because the platforms make the sheer expression of outrage feel so good, the social movement actually becomes chemically dependent on the outrage itself.
Wow.
The movement unconsciously starts to avoid solving the actual problem, because solving the injustice would cut off the endless supply of the outrage drug. The algorithm doesn't want resolution, it wants sustained friction, so the movement becomes a treadmill instead of a journey toward a destination.
Wow. So swallowing corrodes our bodies from the inside out, and spraying just creates a flashy, addictive digital bonfire that leaves the real world exactly as it was.
Exactly.
So how does Anna Kriger say we actually fix the wiring? How do we use the fuel to put out the fire?
We have to move to the third route, which Anna Kriger calls forging. Yeah, think of a master blacksmith. A blacksmith doesn't try to extinguish the fire, but they also don't just stand back and let it burn the shop down. They hold the fire. They concentrate the heat. And they use that immense energy to strike an anvil and permanently change the shape of something hard and resistant.
But you can't just forge a new reality out of thin air just because you're angry. If you're going to strike a piece of hot iron, you need an anvil.
You need a massive amount of weight and structure beneath you. In Anna Kriger's framework, that anvil is called capacity.
Yeah.
You cannot cross the threshold from just venting into actual transformation through sheer willpower or by being really, really morally right.
Right.
You have to build 4 interconnected muscles to create that anvil: coordination, deliberation, coalition, and access.
Now, I want to ground this because when we talk about abstract muscles in the face of life and death stakes, it can sound a bit like, corporate jargon.
Sure.
How does a terrified, furious group of people actually build an anvil?
It's anything but jargon when you look at history. Anna Kriger gives a brilliant, extended historical example of forging. The ACT-UP movement in 1988, specifically their action at the FDA during the height of the AIDS crisis.
Okay.
You have to picture the scene. The government was largely silent. The medical establishment was moving at a glacial pace. The people in that movement were literally watching their friends die, and they knew they were next. They had every reason in the world to just spray their anger, to burn buildings down in pure righteous discharge.
But they didn't just throw a brick and go home.
No, they forged. And they did it by building all four of those muscles Anna Kriger identifies. First, they built coordination. They didn't just have a chaotic mob. They built intricate phone trees, organized affinity groups, and managed the logistics to move thousands of people as one cohesive body.
Wow.
Then they used deliberation. Instead of just being mad at the system in general, they systematically debated and decided to target the FDA specifically, aiming all their kinetic energy at a single pressure point.
And then they built coalitions, right? Reaching outside their immediate circle to bring in sympathetic doctors, rogue scientists, and media allies who could amplify their leverage.
Exactly. But the masterstroke, the absolute core of their anvil, was the fourth muscle. Access.
Access.
ACTUP didn't just show up and yell at a concrete building. They painstakingly taught themselves the highly technical, bureaucratic language of pharmaceutical drug trials.
Which is incredibly dense.
Right. They read the medical journals. They understood double-blind studies. They became an undeniable, terrifying force because they could sit across a mahogany table from government officials and argue the exact granular mechanics of how drug approvals needed to change using the institution's own native language.
That is amazing.
They didn't turn down the volume of their anger for a single second. They just built an incredibly dense, heavy anvil of capacity to strike that anger against. And by doing that, they changed federal policy and saved countless lives.
Which brings up a massive question. If forging is so clearly effective, if it's the only route that actually closes the source of the anger and changes the world, why don't we see it more often? Why are we all so chronically stuck in swallowing our anger or spraying it on the internet?
Because society actively deploys traps to stop us from forging. The comfortable institutions that benefit from the status quo do not want you building an anvil.
No, they don't.
So society sets up deeply ingrained behavioral traps to force marginalized people, and Anna Kriger points out this is particularly and historically true for women, back into the trap of swallowing their anger.
Anna Kriger identifies a couple of specific traps in the book that honestly made my blood boil just reading them because they are so infuriatingly common. The first one is called the muzzle.
Oh, yes.
This is when someone makes a completely valid, mathematically apt point about an injustice, and the room immediately pivots to relabeling her as aggressive or shrill or just a lot to handle right now.
It is a brilliant, terrible psychological trick. By changing the label, the room successfully changes the subject. Suddenly, no one is talking about the actual systemic injustice she brought up. They are entirely exclusively focused on her tone.
Right.
The muzzle artificially raises the social cost of speaking up so high that the person eventually does the math and realizes it's just cheaper to swallow the anger and stay quiet.
Think about how often this happens in our own everyday lives. It's the classic, you'd be a lot prettier if you smiled trap at the bus stop. Or being told you're ruining the vibe at a family dinner because you pointed out a casually cruel joke.
Exactly.
And it pairs perfectly with the second trap Anna Kriger outlines, which is the theater of the reasonable. This is the polite, smiling demand from society that protesters just need to be calm and patient and ask nicely through the proper channels if they want to be taken seriously.
To expose how hollow this theater is, Anna Kriger references Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous letter from the Birmingham jail.
Oh, that's such a good point.
Right. He wasn't writing that letter to the Ku Klux Klan. He was writing to the white moderates, the clergymen who claimed to support his ultimate goals, but constantly criticized his methods for being too disruptive and untimely.
Wow, yeah.
The theater of the reasonable is a rigged game of respectability politics. It tells you that to get a seat at the table, you have to completely abandon the exact disruptive, confrontational tactics that generate the leverage to get you invited to the table in the first place. It forces you to choose between being seen as respectable and actually being effective.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? How do you actually fight back against a trap when it's not some cartoon villain oppressing you, but it's your own friends or your mother or your well-meaning colleagues handing you the muzzle.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Anna Kriger calls this phenomenon horizontal transmission.
Horizontal transmission.
Yeah. These scripts, these societal demands to swallow your fire, aren't usually imposed from a shadowy boardroom of evil oppressors. They are passed down horizontally, peer to peer, mother to daughter, father to son.
That makes it so much harder.
And the tragedy is they're usually wrapped in love. It's passed down as survival knowledge. An older woman tells a younger woman in the office to soften her tone, to use more exclamation points in her emails, because the older woman knows from bitter experience that the corporate world will punish her if she doesn't.
It's an act of protection that accidentally reinforces the prison walls for the next generation.
Okay.
So how do we break that cycle?
You defeat it by naming the device out loud in real time.
Just call it out.
Exactly. When someone polices your tone or tries to enforce the theater of the reasonable, you have to actively refuse the relabeling. You have to politely but firmly keep dragging the conversation back from your manner to the matter at hand. You expose the muzzle for what it is, stripping it of its invisible power.
But Anna Kriger's most original and, frankly, most intellectually challenging insight in the book comes next. Because Anna Kriger argues that sometimes the trap isn't an external oppressor at all. Sometimes the flaw generating the anger is actually baked into our own internal map.
This is where the book requires a high degree of honesty and vulnerability from the reader. Anna Kriger introduces the concept of the impossible role.
The impossible role.
This happens when we are experiencing chronic anger, not because of a specific injustice, but because we are trying to follow a contradictory script.
Let's ground this again. What does a contradictory script look like in practice?
It means that sometimes the societal script we inherited demands two completely opposing things that cannot mathematically exist in the same universe. For example, Anna Kriger highlights a common gender script that demands a romantic partner be entirely decisively dominant and take total charge, but simultaneously demands that they be entirely deferential, anticipating and yielding to your every emotional need.
Right.
If you hold that script as your standard, you will always perpetually be angry at your partner, because no human being in any reality can satisfy both of those opposing demands simultaneously. Anger at a contradiction is a fire that can never be put out because you are constantly measuring reality against an impossible, broken map.
I have to push back hard here because when I first read that chapter, the alarm bells went off for me. Doesn't telling an angry, marginalized person that their expectations are just contradictory sound exactly like victim blaming? Isn't saying your internal map is broken just a highly intellectualized version of the muzzle?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact edge Anna Kriger navigates incredibly carefully. The book stresses, repeatedly, that the impossible role is strictly a self-diagnosis tool.
Oh, okay.
It is never, ever an accusation you are allowed to hurl at someone else to dismiss their valid anger. If you tell your partner or a colleague that their anger is just a contradiction in their own head, you are weaponizing the concept to muzzle them. But if you bravely look inward at your own chronic frustrations, it becomes a profound tool for your own liberation.
And Anna Kriger makes a point to emphasize that this double bind doesn't just apply to one demographic. It runs both ways. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. The impossible script traps everyone. Anna Kriger points out that men are handed a profoundly contradictory script from birth. Men are severely punished socially for showing fear or vulnerability. They are told to be completely stoic, unshakable rocks.
Yeah, boys don't cry.
Right? But simultaneously, modern scripts demand that they be deeply emotionally connected, fluent in therapy speak, and entirely open. They are trapped in a no-win scenario, an impossible role, just as women are trapped in theirs.
So if we diagnose that we are operating on a contradictory script, how do we fix it?
It entirely depends on where the wrong actually lives. When the wrong is in the real, physical, Winnold-like unequal pay or a discriminatory law or a toxic boss, we forge, we build our anvil, we gather our coalition, and we strike the iron.
But when it's internal?
When we realize the wrong is in an inherited, impossible script, when we are demanding two incompatible realities at once, we have to engage in what Anna Kriger calls deprogramming. We have to catch ourselves in the moment the alarm goes off, recognize that the smoke detector is reacting to a broken map, and consciously, deliberately rewrite the expectations we were handed.
We have covered incredible ground today. So, to synthesize this journey for you, first, your anger is not a moral failing. It is mechanical fuel. It is a pre-rational alarm system. When it goes off, do not just blindly reach for the volume knob.
Right, don't just turn it down.
Do not swallow the fire, because it will slowly corrode your body from the inside out while the person who wronged you walks free. And do not just spray that fuel into a flashy digital bonfire of clicktivism that warms your hands for a night, but leaves the actual institutions entirely untouched. Instead, build your anvil. Build the capacity of coordination, deliberation, coalition, and access. Forge your anger into a specialized blade. And finally, have the courage to look inward and deprogram the impossible, contradictory scripts you've inherited that keep you angry at the wind.
It is a fundamentally different, empowered way to live with anger. And to leave you with one final fascinating insight from Anna Kriger that we haven't even touched on yet, I want you to consider the arc of anger.
The arc of anger. Walk us through that.
Anna Kriger points out that anger is not a linear dial where more is always better or more is always worse. It operates on a bell curve, an arc. Up to a certain peak on that arc, anger actually sharpens the human mind. It provides incredible clarity, it cuts through the fog of social politeness, and it floods your system with the exact courage needed to speak an uncomfortable truth. Wow, okay.
But past that peak, as you go down the other side of the arc, anger shatters the mind. It narrows your attention until you lose all peripheral vision and all nuance, and you almost always end up lashing out at the wrong target, all while feeling 100% biologically certain that you are right.
So the physical sensation of the shattering feels exactly like the sharpening, just intensified. You don't realize you've crossed the peak until the damage is done.
Exactly. And here is the truly dark part of that mechanic. Professional provocateurs know this arc exists.
Oh no.
Yeah, opponents, algorithms, and bad faith actors will actively try to push you past your peak. They want to trigger you into that shattering band, specifically so you will lose your nuance, discredit your own movement, and effectively do their destructive work for them.
That is chilling. So the final challenge for you to mull over after you take your headphones off today is this. How can you learn to map your own internal arc? How can you learn to recognize your own peak so you can step back and breathe right when you are getting flooded, maintaining your anger strictly in that sharpening band as the formidable, world-changing tool it was always meant to be?
That is such a powerful, mechanical way to look at ourselves. You know, we started this deep dive standing in that ancient courtroom, paralyzed by the debate over whether your anger makes you a righteous person or a toxic one. But Anna Kriger is handing you the keys to walk out of that courtroom forever. Don't look at your anger as a moral verdict on your soul. Look at it as a compass. It is simply telling you where a boundary has been crossed. It is entirely up to you to build the mat and the muscle to follow it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Feminism Beyond Anger. We will see you next time.